So hi there and welcome to another episode of Insights with NetSupport. My name is Mark Anderson. I'm the Head of Education at NetSupport, and it gives me great delight to welcome onto the show today somebody I've known for, we've been talking for such a long time before hitting the record button. You'd think it was one of the things that we covered, but I've known this person for easily a decade, if not longer. And I've known this person because they've been at the forefront of thinking around using technology for teaching and learning, predominantly from a languages base. But as we all know, there are many ways to approach these things. And so the ideas and the approaches that he shares resonate beyond the teaching of language learning. If you are somebody who uses social media, you will definitely know this person. The founder of a hashtag, MFL Twitterati, which again has massive popularity over on X, formerly known as Twitter. If you don't know who I'm talking about, then what rock have you been hiding under? It gives me great pleasure to welcome onto Insights today, the one, the only Mr. Joe Dale. Welcome, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Mark. That was a really lovely introduction. Very different from what people normally say. So that was really, that's put me in a really good mood, and I can't wait to have a good chat about all things EdTech and languages, as well as across the curriculum as well.
Oh, great stuff, Joe. And I'm really excited to unpick the questions we've worked out together to cover through. But just for those if they have been hiding under a rock and don't know who you are and where you come from and the different awards you've won and so forth and so on, could you share a little about your sort of provenance, how you've got to be where you are today in your career?
Yep, no problem at all. So basically, my background is I'm a former French teacher, former languages teacher. I taught for 13 years in total, 3 years at secondary school level, and then 10 years at middle school level. 9 to 13-year-olds. So I've got upper primary and secondary school experience. For the last 14 years, I've been an independent languages consultant. So I decided to leave the classroom around 2009 and go for what I was doing part-time, full-time, e.g. running training and speaking at conferences. And as a result of my move into independent consultancy, I've been able to travel literally all over the world. I've been to places like Australia and New Zealand and North America and South America and the Middle East and all over Europe. But as a result of the pandemic and Brexit as well, I have changed my model of delivery. So I normally now mostly deliver training online, as well as giving webinars, but I do online training, I do series and so on and so forth. And again, I'm doing that literally with people from all over the world. And I've worked with language associations as well as other EdTech providers, literally here, there and everywhere. I'm very active on Twitter, X now, as one should say. I've got 34,900 followers, I think it is now. So nearly at 35,000. Can't wait to breach that threshold. That'd be lovely. And my YouTube channel has got well over 3,000 or something subscribers. And my brand new Facebook group, Language Teaching with AI, has also got about 3,600 followers as well. So I'm very, very active in the space, but I couldn't do what I do without the support of the community, particularly language teachers, as well as people interested in EdTech. And I'm also very much into podcasting as well. I'm currently producing a podcast for Kate Clifton, the Kate Languages podcast, but I've actually been podcasting since 2006. So as with lots of things, I'm very much an early adopter, and I was there right at the beginning of that sort of interest in podcasting. So that's a potted history for anyone that has been hiding under a rock and doesn't know who I am.
Great stuff. Thanks, Joe. And we'll dive into some of those things, particularly around podcasting and some other things during the course of the conversation today. But speaking about social media and engaging and the power of community and networking things, you created a hashtag MFL Twitterati, and it's been again popular. I mean, how old is it? Can you tell us a bit more about it and how people can get involved with the MFL Twitterati?
Absolutely. So officially, I've always said in other conversations, etc., I've had about this, that it sort of was born around sort of 2007. So I remember I remember seeing a tweet from a lady called Lynn Horn, who's based in Tobermory on the Isle of Mull, talking about lots of us going down to the southwest to a teach meet in a sort of Bristol area, which Chris Fullerisms on Twitter, was organizing. And I remember Lynn saying, "Oh, are the MFL space Twitterati all going down to Bristol for this Teach Meet event?" And I thought, "Ooh, I like that, MFL Twitterati." And it really just came from there. And then I sort of put it together in a hashtag. Hashtags seemed very new at the time. The idea that you could connect with people through a hashtag and learn from people that way was just amazing. And the idea then of like a back channel, being at an event and being able to follow on Twitter and see what people were doing in other rooms at a conference, for example, around sort of 2007, that felt pretty revolutionary, even though now it's very much commonplace. And I must give a shout out to Digital Maverick as well, who was absolutely fantastic in getting us all started at this event, the Isle of Wight conference back in 2007, and encouraging us to tweet. So Drew Buddy, for those people that don't know who he is, and he was encouraging us to tweet and follow the hashtag, which was IOW Conference 08, which, considering we only had 140 characters at the time, was that was he had a little word with me afterwards saying, actually, I think maybe not having such a long hashtag would have been a good idea. But that's really where that all started. Isle of Wight Conference 08, MFL Twitterati, and then really from those face-to-face events, I organized 3 separate conferences on the Isle of Wight as part of my work with the Specialty Schools and Academies Trust. I was a lead practitioner for 3 years. And then back in sort of 2011 at Southampton University, we created this new sort of event called ILIC, or ILILC, which was stood for I can't even remember now. It was ICT, links into languages. Basically, it was integrating ICT with links into languages. So links into languages was the name of the network, which was helping to organize it. And then I had my input. And really from there, that's when it started mushrooming. And that's where the hashtag really started to get legs. And I'm incredibly proud of the fact that, as you said, literally people are using this from all over the world. There's the equivalent in the States called LangChat, and the MFL Twitterati hashtag, along with LangChat, really are the 2 main ways I would say that people can use to connect with language teachers from all around the world. And it's not just about one person doing this, it's about the community pushing forward and spreading the word. And as you know yourself, Mark, it takes a lot of effort to make a hashtag popular. So it's probably one of my proudest achievements, to be honest, that the fact that we have that hashtag, and the fact that it has changed lots and lots and lots of people's lives for the better, as a way of connecting with like-minded people, as a way of sharing resources, as a way of networking, and so on and so forth. So it's the number of benefits that have happened as a result of that hashtag are myriad, and really impossible to say exactly how it's helped, but I know it's had a huge influence on many people. So there we are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, even if I was just to search for it very quickly now, people, when you're new to a platform as well, you don't know who to follow, you don't know, who's got a good voice. You're looking for ideas, you want some help, but if you put something out there and you don't have any followers, then how will anybody know what it is that you're actually asking a question about? Well, bang on the MFL Twitterati hashtag onto your query, and people see it, don't they? And that's where the network is definitely more powerful than the node, and the hashtag helps sort of unite and bring people together. So if you are a languages teacher or a supporter of language learning in its many sort of various guises, please do go and check out MFL Twitterati. You'll be sure to find a very welcoming group of teachers coming back to you with ideas and support and recommendations and all those different things. Joe, I wanted to say, as you have, more you than I, but over the years I've worked with my fair share of languages teachers, supporting them with teaching and learning and things around technology. But I think it's pretty fair to say they're a very sort of creative bunch, and they are quite not necessarily adept, obviously, although they are, but they're not scared of technology. They're really enthusiastic about the uses of it and how it can support the teaching and learning of languages. So given that we're a show called Insights, and we look to share insights into a variety of topics within education, can you share any insights about how some teachers could think about using technology in innovative ways to help them with their teaching or their students' learning if you teach languages?
Absolutely. I mean, just before we start that, I agree with you. I think that language teachers are very creative. I think they're time poor, as everyone is in the teaching profession, but I think they are very creative. I've always said it was probably the language teachers that first jumped on the idea of using a cassette player and bringing that into the classroom, or a video recorder that you could then bring in and show videos, etc., to the classes. OHPs as well, I'm sure. It was probably language teachers that first jumped on this and tried lots and lots of different ideas of engaging learners with different types of technology to make them like languages even more. And I think that's really all about communication and about the fact that you are trying to teach a subject through the target language, through the medium, which is unique really to modern languages in the secondary and the primary curriculum, I think. That you have to use, it's advisable to find ways in which you can use technology as well as other forms such as games and dancing and non-verbal cues and things like that to engage the learners. And I think definitely technology can help with that, can be a hook to help with that, although it's not the be-all and end-all, to say the least. But I think a nice blend of techie ideas and non-techie ideas is the way forward. So in relation to creativity, I mean, there are so many creative ideas shared on the MFL Twitterati hashtag. There's also my my list, which I've curated over many years, called the MFL Twitterers list, which you can find on my X profile as well, which is really easy to find. I think that would be another really good thing that you could do for, say, I don't know, 10 minutes a day while you're having a cup of coffee. Just have a look through that MFL Twitterers list, which has over 2,000 or so members and has nearly 5,000 members, but has over 2,000 subscribers. That's what I was trying to say. So that would be a really good place to start. But talking about individual teachers, I know that just recently I watched a Linguoscope webinar from the amazing Marie Aliro, who is a prep French teacher, and she is a huge fan of Genially, and she uses it for creating escape rooms and things like that. I mean, she can do things I have no idea on how she's doing them. I'm sure I could learn how to do it, but she's an absolute expert. She also has her own Facebook group, Teaching with Genially, which has over 11,000 members.
Wow.
She's also a lovely person, which is also important to say as well. But in this Linguoscope webinar, she was showing all these creative ways in which you can use Genially as a way of creating escape rooms. They have templates that come with them. She also likes to incorporate other third-party plugins with plugins like Scape, for example, SCAPE. And she also was showing a chatbot called MindJoy, which she uses in Genially as well. Now, I don't know if you've been playing around at all with chatbots, but I know Mizou, Mizou, I'm really excited about, from the point of view that it is GDPR compliant. It's also COPPA and FERPA compliant for those people watching this in the States. They say on their website they are not going to share any student data for the students to use the chatbots, and you can basically use it for any subject. So in languages, you could, for example, and I've done this in various webinars, you can set it up so that you can get it to play the role of, let's say, a French waiter in a French cafe, and then the students can then interact with it, and they can hear the text being replied back to. So you can click on the play button, hear what the waiter is saying, and then you can use your voice to record your answer, and it then transcribes that, presumably using the Whisper API, to turn it into text, and you can have a real conversation with it. And what's nice from the teacher point of view is the teacher can set up a chat bot. It generates a link. You give the link to the students. The students do run the session, and then the teacher gets to see the whole conversation of anything that's been taken part in with the chat bot and the student. And in the free version as well, it will also give feedback based on the interaction that's happened. So that was amazing. So Mindjoy, as I said, Marie was talking about in relation to Genially, but there is Mizu. There's also School AI as well, also allows you to create chatbots. So I think that's really, really exciting. And then on a similar idea, Esmeralda Salgado, who won the Silver Award for Teacher of the Year through Pearson, which is the first time that had ever happened from a language teaching point of view. And then ironically, last year, another language teacher, Jose, also won the Silver Award. So we're doing great stuff. That's all I can say. And but in relation to Esmeralda, she's a very creative teacher. She's also a big fan of technology, and she's been playing around with these video tools that you can get to create talking avatars, whereby you put your text in and it then will have that read back to you in the target language. So, for example, she was using a couple of tools recently. One is called Synthesia, so Synthesia. Another one is called Deep Brain, and then there's other similar tools. There's one, Hey Gen, which is probably the one that most people have heard about, and there's also Credo, which is Kreado. So all of those allow you to create different talking avatars, but with the text to speech. And the model of pronunciation is pretty good. There are other tools which can also mimic a good model of pronunciation, which is obviously really good for encouraging independence and for helping with pronunciation. So those are a couple of ideas from Mary and from Esmeralda.
A couple of ideas. Joe, we're already getting so many great insights and things we can go away and try out and what have you. In the introduction, we talked about podcasting, and so people do know you as somebody who is somebody who really advocates for the use of podcasting in teaching and learning. I wanted to ask you, Joe, on Insights, what makes a good podcast in education? And I'm not talking about the ones we find from celebrities or around politics, that sort of thing. I think about in teaching and learning, and how can podcasting actually help with learning?
Well, I think from the point of view of podcasting, I think I've always been, as you know, I've always been an advocate of podcasting. And it's been really interesting to see in recent years the number of educational podcasts that have been coming out. It's really, that has really blossomed. And I think prior to about maybe, 2010, maybe, we weren't seeing that many educational podcasts. It was really just for those real enthusiasts that wanted to dip their toes into podcasting. But then I think more latterly, probably as a result of tools like Anchor, now podcasting with Spotify, made it so simple to not only record and edit on a mobile device as well as on desktop, but also upload and share, and the way it could push to many popular directories such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify and so on and so forth. So I think that really opened the door to lots of educators who wanted to play around with podcasting. And now there are many educational podcasts out there, which is great, and I absolutely love that. And the number of teachers that are using podcasting in schools is, I think, a much smaller number compared to, let's say, classic interview shows. And I think probably the reason for that is because it does take a lot of time to put together something which is good, of good quality. I think the audio side of things is important. I know some people are more than happy just to record with an inbuilt microphone on a device or on a laptop, which I do get. I do understand that. But personally, I think if you're going to go for producing a show, you want more than just, let's say, the local community to listen to, then it's worth investing in a nice quality microphone and so on and so forth. I think also recently with Spotify deciding to remove the option to record and edit as part of their podcasting platform. Now you can only host on the platform. It means that's going to make it more tricky, maybe, or produce more barriers to getting into podcasting. But I was podcasting with my students when I was teaching back in 2007. So I was just using Audacity. I was recording with them using a USB microphone and then uploading to Podomatic, which I think is still going. And so those are the, the heady days of the early adopters in podcasting. But I think having student voice, to me personally, I think that's wonderful. I think planning a podcast is really important as well. I think if you're just going to just do a no edit recording with either with teachers or with students, that's okay to a certain extent, particularly if it's video. But I think if it's audio and you've got gaps and pauses and restarts and things like that, then it's worth editing it. But editing does take time, as I said already. Teachers are time poor. Personally, I've become a bit of an Audacity ninja. I've joined various podcasting groups. The one I particularly recommend if you're into podcasting is called Podcast Editors Club, which was started by Steve Stewart and has got many, many thousands of members. And if you're particularly interested in the editing side of things, it's wonderful. I've learned so much, and just watching YouTube clips and learning how to, for example, create my own macros and things like that, and just settings from industry experts as well really helps. But I think that the basic idea of just recording something and putting it out there is still a great idea. But I think to produce something which you want more than just a few people to listen to, you do have to take time in producing it and editing it and planning it. And maybe most teachers just feel they don't have the time to do that. And that's probably why we haven't had as many student-based podcasts as we would have liked to have seen. Because I always felt back in sort of 2006, 2007, it's going to be a revolution for education. It just hasn't happened. Although, as I said, there are many, many more educators now who are either producing their own podcasts or appearing on podcasts. And it's now totally become part of the norm to do that. Whereas maybe a few years ago, the idea of appearing on a podcast, that sounds like a lot of work, sounds very technical, sounds very difficult. Actually, the barriers on that have been reduced greatly, I think. What do you think, Mark, on that front?
Oh, he's throwing things back at me, Joe. And there was me lined up with some questions for you about macros and how podcasts promote learning in subjects beyond language learning. But definitely there's been an explosion of different blogs and podcasts. Lots of these sort of conversations come or recordings happen in two ways as well, like we're doing now. So Insights is recorded using a platform called StreamYard, very popular platform. I used it a lot during the pandemic. The Guess award-winning show I did with Ollie Lewis, Learn Live UAE, was all done and live streamed to YouTube from StreamYard. But when you've got platforms like this, which after we finish recording this, not only can we download the video, but we can also download the audios. That's why Insights is available as a podcast and available as a vlog to watch on YouTube. Please do head over to youtube.com/NetSupport to check out all of our different blog content, or head over to your podcasting tool of choice and look for NetSupport Radio, where you'll find all of our recordings there. Thanks for the chance to plug, Joe. But there's been a massive explosion of it because, and I think again it's tied into the pandemic, coupled with the ease of access to these tools. Many teachers had a rocket in terms of their professional learning and confidence and competence in using technology during the pandemic. Many will have invested in a half decent microphone, a little, a little portable desk one. It doesn't have to be expensive to improve the audio quality. And so with these things available, and people wanting to get together and share, and recognizing that often some of the best CPD comes from hosting these kinds of shows. You know me, Joe, I've hosted many different shows and been involved as a sort of compere and as a host and as a guest on many of these things over the years. But they're great professional learning. This conversation today, I'm learning things from you. I class myself as being an expert in this field, but like you, we talked about this off air before we came on, and I know you'll talk more about your Facebook group in a moment, but that ability to bring people together, the network is always more powerful than the node. A friend of mine, Gary Henderson, you might know on Twitter, he's been a previous guest on some shows we've done here as well. He's the director of IT at Millfield School, and he always shares his adage that the most important person in a room is the room. And by that, he means the collective of people within that space. When you combine that learning, the opportunities that people know within that space, then that's where the strength of the network really comes in. And so, yeah, I think it's a great platform. But like you said, Joe, it hasn't lifted itself up as much as it has with educators doing their thing as it has with children. And I would suggest, and I'd be interested in if you agree with this, I think personally that using podcasting as a tool for learning is fantastic. Oracy, if we look at the work of School 21 and so forth and so on, and the research behind using your voice, regardless of whether it's as part of a language subject or not, is massively powerful. It reinforces recall, it helps move things from your short-term to your long-term memory, and being on the hot foot, having to respond in a moment to share things, it's really good for helping keep your memory, knowledge, and abilities agile. And so, if there is the opportunity to try out these things inside your classroom, within your department, or within your school, whether even if it's just a podcast for the entire school where you reflect on learning, I think it's something that's definitely worth exploring, particularly given many people now have access to both the tools, software and hardware, and that enable these things to happen. And you can host for free. It doesn't cost anything, right? So if you've got this stuff already, it's a bit like your skills, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So if you've got this equipment, why not use it before you lose it? What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think the idea around confidence is also incredibly important. So I know that through my own podcasting, by seeing students gain confidence as a result of that whole rehearsal that you do before you actually record, that you practice and practice, you know that you're publishing to a real audience, so you want it to be as good as possible. I think that's incredibly important. I know that you've talked many times before about confidence in EdTech and how confidence is so important. And I think that when you are, put on the spot, you want to make sure that you do the best job that you can do. I think it really helps with confidence in all forms of life. I mean, in the pandemic, I helped to organize over 150 webinars with the Association for Language Learning, which we called TILT, which stood for Technology and Language Teaching. We are still doing these as well, although we're not doing them at the same rate. I think the last one we did was about 3 months ago, but at the start of the pandemic, we were literally doing 2 or 3 a week because there was such a big need for this. And it was wonderful from the point of view that because I've, like yourself, have been involved in this sort of area for many years, I was able to harness my contact book and was able to get in contact with people from Australia and the States and from Europe and what have you, and saying, I don't suppose you could, come on to the a Tilt webinar and share your expertise in X, Y, and Z. And the vast majority of people said, yes, absolutely. And so I was able to introduce people from literally all over the world to a UK audience, although we were getting people coming along live from all over the world as well. And that was amazing. And I think that my hosting skills improved as a result, although as I said already, I had a history of podcasting already, and being able to think on your feet, I think, is really, really important when things go wrong, which inevitably they do when you're doing a live podcast or live vlog, and you have to be able to deal with situations and when things aren't quite going right, and just reflecting your calm persona to everybody else, so that everyone feels relaxed and what have you. I think that's incredibly important. So again, I think that podcasting and vlogging certainly has a huge power in giving people confidence, either teachers or students. But I think probably the main reason why we haven't seen as many students appearing in podcasting is because of the fact it does take a certain amount of time to put these things together, even though we can, as you said, we can do the whole process now completely for free. But there is quite a big learning curve, I think, unless you're going to produce something which with no editing at all. But how many people want to listen to that? I think that's the thing, which is true. But nonetheless, I still would like to see more students appearing in podcasts if teachers have the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And whilst you were sharing then, Joe, I was reflecting on a webinar that I've been organising for NetSupport on June the 6th, featuring guests Paddy McGrath from Texthelp and our CEO, Al Kingsley, where we're exploring this idea of human flourishing. There's a real rethink in education at the moment, as I'm sure you're aware, Joe, about what education should be about. And sure, qualifications are important, but in a world with AI, and this will be a nice segue into my next question for you. See you thinking on my feet, Joe, using those skills. But the idea is that, and you know this as a teacher yourself, and we both talk about being former teachers, but you never stop being a teacher, really. I don't think, you still have that sort of teacher's mindset. And there's far more to education than just exams and the subject contents. It's where you learn how to interact with people. It's where you learn how to have to speak, to think on your feet. And historically, people have called these sorts of things soft skills, but they're not soft skills. They're actually quite hard to learn, and they do take time, practice, dedication. And I think there's this idea of podcasting where you can get to practice an awful lot of these so-called soft skills beforehand, which have cornerstones in really important things like oracy, like relationships, like the ability to be respectful, to respond intelligently when you're asked a question. All these different things. They're not soft, they're hard, and they do take practice. And I think podcasting can really give people that opportunity to practice those things in a really safe environment, because it's school, right? And so if you make a mistake while you're recording a podcast at school, well, then that's fine. You can just edit it out anyway, can't you? Right. So,
Exactly.
I think there's an awful lot of weight behind it. But I mentioned those two, talk about a roller coaster. AI. You mentioned some fantastic tools a little while ago. I wanted to jump into a question about AI, if I can, Joe, and with my work outside NetSupport, and I know your work as well, and we'll do a shout out in a moment as well for your Facebook group, which has been really popular and really well received. But there is no getting away from the roller coaster that is AI. It's obviously been around for a very, very, very long time. But with the launch of ChatGPT back in November October 21, whenever it was, it's just gone from strength to strength to strength, and from all the different tools and things that have excited us over the years, and we both shared at events around AR and VR and video use and all these different things, gamification, esports, all sorts. But nothing has captured the attention and the minds of teachers like AI in my career. I don't know about yourself, Joe. So I want to ask you, how has AI impacted your work, and what sort of things beyond what you shared earlier are you sharing with people about its use? What sort of things are you sort of talking and sharing about, Joe?
Okay, so well, essentially, I think as with lots of people, it's been an absolute revolution. So, like yourself, I'm always monitoring trends and trying to see where things are going in relation to making sure that I'm up to date with everything, because that's what you have to do. Otherwise, you're toast in this sort of game, as it were. And so I could see very, very quickly that ChatGPT, as well as other large language models, were absolutely grabbing attention the way that I've never seen previously, which was very, very exciting, a bit scary at the time as well, but very, very exciting. And right from the word go, more or less, I was all over it. I was listening to podcasts, watching YouTube clips, gaining a great deal from places like LinkedIn, as well as Twitter X and various Facebook groups and what have you. And right from the word go, more or less, I think the first Tilt webinar that we did around AI was February 2023, because I think it was November 2022 when ChatGPT launched. And I think even within the first week, I think it was, they had 1 million subscribers. And then within the first 2 months, they had 100 million subscribers, which beat all the records that previously had happened for the speed of signups. And so back in February, we had Julia Morris, who's Jushmo on Twitter X. So if you're not following Julia, I'd really encourage you to do so. And she wanted to do an hour-long webinar on ChatGPT. And there were a number of other people that wanted to also speak on the same topic. And so what we decided to do was have Julia for an hour and then have like an hour of show and tell, whereby people would have 5 minutes each. And I think we had about 9 speakers, again, from mostly from the UK, but we also had Francois Stolder from Hungary. We had a couple of speakers, I think it was 3 speakers from the States who had were either presenting live or had pre-recorded their videos. And it was amazing. And I think I'm not exactly sure how many people have watched that video now, but I think it's well over 1,000. It might be 1,500 views of that video. So I could see immediately the potential in how it could be used in languages. And then since then, we've had a number of other AI related Tilt webinars, and essentially it's been the main topic that I've been exploring and have been running either face-to-face training on, both with language teachers as well as across the curriculum. I started a 4-part webinar series back in May of 2023 on the use of AI, particularly ChatGPT, for creating resources and saving language teachers time. I ran it in May, in June, and also in January 2024. And about 290 people from around the world have done this course so far. Recordings are available. But that's been, again, similar to what you were saying earlier, actually, Mark, about sort of learning by podcasting, by vlogging, by me connecting with all those people. That was fantastic in keeping up to date with everything, getting insights from other people. It then led to other bookings. I was asked to give, a keynote in Australia. I've worked with a couple of universities in the States just off the back of those connections. So if you can, prove to people that you're an expert in this area by regularly posting on Facebook or Twitter or what have you, then that's when the new round of work follows. And that's really what I've been exploring. So in lots of ways, I remember on another podcast I was talking about this, regarding it as a type of playground, having a play with these different tools and seeing what they can produce. And you get a gut feeling on seeing something, whether it's going to be useful or not. But exploring it with other people, again, that's why I think having a Facebook group is so powerful, in the way in which you can answer questions easily, but you can also share posts and what have you. And one of the main ways I've been using AI recently is I've been creating transcripts of sessions that I've done, as well as other, say, YouTube clips, etc., which is really easy to do. Putting that into ChatGPT, getting it to write an article based on that transcript of, and you can make it very, very detailed if you want to, and then adding your own voice to it. So it's not just a copy and paste job, as it were, which obviously is inauthentic and there are ethical issues around that, but adding your own voice to that. And as a result of that, you can share a lot more content in the same period of time. So I've been trying to find ways in which it has been able to improve my workflow. Like yourself, Mark, we're both very, very busy. If we can find little shortcuts in making life easier and boosting our productivity, then that's fantastic. And it's been great fun in exploring ways in which we can use AI in order to do that. There's lots of tools I could name drop, but maybe shall I come back to you now for the next question, as it were?
Well, it's just a follow-on, really, and a reinforcement of what you're saying. You know, I saw, I think it was McKinsey shared from some research, you know, 40% increase in productivity for those people who use AI compared to those who don't. And, you know, I see that massively. I'm not a fan of some of the cut and paste or copy and paste, at least, stuff I'm seeing on social media. You know, I'm regularly seeing, and you know, you teach your radar sort of goes ding when you see, when a child submits some work. Right, back in the day, it was like if mum and dad had helped them with their homework. Right, these days it's not like as if ChatGPT or, you know, Gemini or Perplexity or whatever, Claude, has helped you. So, but I see teachers doing it, and I know why people would want to you know, save time and do that. But I think we mentioned ethics, you know, and there's a lot of ethics and things around the use of generative AI, and it's a great opportunity. You know, you can, if you're using some of the interesting tools in the Google Labs, for example, the ability to make music, the ability to create images using Ideogram or DALL-E or DALL-E embedded in things like Microsoft Designer or within Canva. Or there are so many different tools available to help. I think, like you said, you know, around things, I don't think it's ethically or morally correct, really, to just be copying and pasting and sharing things. And you know, for sure, AI can democratize things, and it makes you know, language and graphics and so many things more accessible to so many more people. But I think it's really important to keep the human in the loop with these sorts of things, Joe.
I totally,
So yeah. So I saw a really interesting, and maybe I'll bring this question to you. I saw a really interesting post on Twitter recently by somebody who can sometimes be a little bit contentious and provocative. Adam Boxer was talking about the use of these tools to create teaching and learning resources. And his concern was, and I share the same concern, really, where teachers will make something, and particularly, you know, concerning for early career teachers, you know, ECTs, who might not have the depth of experience and knowledge of syllabi and you know, curriculum content, but making a resource and then just, you know, the tool makes it. They don't balance check it. They don't add anything of their own experience to it to make it more appropriate for the class, and just lift it from here to here, and away it goes. You know, so that does sort of give me, you know, a fair amount of concern, like it does for him. Have you got any strategies for how we can sort of mitigate that, Joe?
Well, I think that's a really, really important point, and that's why I always suggest in sessions, etc., that I give, that it's incredibly important that if you're going to use AI, that you always critically analyze anything that it does produce. And obviously, in the case of a teacher, one would expect they'd have good subject knowledge. They would be able to analyze whether the output that the AI has produced can be used as is, or whether they need to tweak it. And almost certainly they would need to tweak it. And I sort of refer to this idea of, you know, Vygotsky's zone of possible development, and this idea of the more knowledgeable other, which I previously sort of suggested that could be, for example, social media. In other words, the idea that you ask Twitter X or a Facebook group or what have you, a particular question where you know a lot about that answer already, the potential answer already, but you know that the social media community will know a little bit more. And I think exactly AI is exactly the same. That you're asking a question, but you've already got a good knowledge of what the answer could be, and therefore, when the AI produces output, you're then able to critically analyze that and decide whether you need to tweak it or whether you don't. And sometimes you don't, but a lot of the time you do, particularly in relation to text and in relation to, say, tone and style. And I think there are certain red flags. For example, ChatGPT particularly likes a word like delve. So if you see it, if you see text with the word delve in, or you see a text which has been written by someone in Britain, and they're using American English, for example, things like personalize with a Z, and things like, and also the word underscore as well. That tends to be very popular amongst ChatGPT. I don't know if the same is true of other large language models, but that's something I've certainly have identified. So if you are seeing texts that have been written which do have, for example, American English and what have you, but been written by people in Britain, maybe they haven't quite done the due diligence on editing that they should have done. But I totally agree with you. I think that if people are just passing off work as their own, but are not editing it or changing it, etc., to suit the audience, which obviously in this case are students, then they're not really they're not thinking enough about who they are actually producing the resources for, or maybe they're thinking more about saving time, which I do totally understand, but they do need to edit any content for bias, for potential sexism, etc., stereotyping, without just using it as it is. But I do appreciate that people are very busy, and so maybe people just or naturally they can just miss things, etc. But in general, I think having this idea of a more knowledgeable other, I think, is helpful. So if you regard, let's say, ChatGPT, etc., as a learning buddy, that's okay to a certain extent, but without having that background knowledge to be able to work out whether if the LLM has produced rubbish or whether it's good, because sometimes it will, confidently lie to you like it's a 5-year-old. It will say something's black when it's white, etc., and you need to see and carefully ascertain whether it's hallucinated, whether it's made things up, what it is that you need to change. And personally, I don't know if you agree with this, Mark, but personally, I find that it's if you ask it a sort of quite general question, general prompt, and you get an answer back, it's quite easy for you to sort of see immediately, even though you're not exactly sure what it is that you actually want to produce. It's a bit like a sort of like a brainstorming session. It's quite quick for you to see something that you don't like, and then as a result of seeing what you don't like, you can then work out what it is that you do like, if that makes sense. So I use it a lot for brainstorming. I'm a fan of a multi-prompt approach rather than trying to get everything from the one prompt. I like to put in a prompt, see what it comes back with, and think, well, I don't like that, but that's given me an idea, and then just going from there. So having it as a type of conversational partner, but I've also already got a good understanding of what it is I want it to produce.
Yeah, no, I agree, Joe. And I think iteration, if you think you're going to be able to sit down, ask it to do something, and then it spits out the perfect response straight off the bat, then you're on a hiding to nowhere straight away with that, aren't you? So being mindful that iteration is key. My STAIR model that you're aware of, iteration is a key step in helping you sort of get the responses that you want. I think there's also a tipping point between productivity and efficiency and a rabbit hole. So if you are looking to try and get a perfect response, then again you're probably on a hiding to nowhere. So recognizing that these tools will get you to a certain point, and at that point it's then important that you sort of take over and bring your knowledge to it. You mentioned the hallucinations thing, which is obviously key too, and the little adage that I share with teachers when I'm doing my work, Joe, is that ChatGPT, etc., are a bit like every child in your classroom, in that you'll want to check their work, right? So you can't just take it as being perfect, correct, and all the rest of it. You do need to go in there and dive a bit deeper, and don't just accept what's being given as being the right thing off the bat. So listen, Joe, I'm mindful of time. We're heading towards one of the, and I knew we'd have a long and interesting conversation. I want to start to wrap things up, if that's all right. We've shared a few things. You've shared far more. In terms of resources, we've and I'll pop these across the bottom, but I'll read them out as well. If you do want to connect with Joe on social media, then he's on X and other platforms at Joe Dale. His YouTube channel is easy as well. If you just search for Joe Dale on YouTube, you'll find him. But the address, as you'll see across the bottom of the screen, although you won't if you're listening, is youtube.com/Joe Dale. And if you wanted to join Joe with his Facebook group, which is called Language Teaching with AI, simply go onto Facebook and look for Language Teaching with AI. And if you're looking, there may be some other groups with similar names. But if you are watching, look at Joe's background. That's the image which you'll find on the Facebook group. So please do check out Language Teaching with AI, where you can learn with Joe and learn from him, and also from the many thousands of others who are inside that Facebook group. I wanted to wrap up, Joe, by just getting a few final sort of nuggets from you, if we could. We always sort of try and ask about some recommendations. So could you please just, and we've made plenty during the course of our conversation today, so thank you for that. But could you recommend 3 things, such as podcasts or YouTube channels or people to connect with and would be of interest? And it may be in the realm of language teaching and learning, but it might be beyond that. So could you give us sort of 3 recommendations for people to sort of go away and find out more about and follow up with, please?
No worries at all. So I would start off by talking about a couple of podcasts, which I'd really, really recommend, both of which are by Wayside Publishing, which are an American publishing company. And the first one is Language Lounge. So the Language Lounge podcast, which is hosted by Michelle Olah. That's Olah. She's fantastic, and she's done many, many episodes of the Language Lounge podcast, really easy to find on all the popular platforms. She has people on there talking about EdTech, as well as lots of other themes relevant to language learning, useful for people from literally all over the world. The other Wayside Publishing podcast I'd recommend is brand new, and there's only 4 or 5 episodes so far, and that is called EdTech World. And that is hosted by Meredith White, who's also fantastic and a wonderful person for connecting with on various platforms and learning from. I've learned a huge amount from Meredith over the years. And as I said, she's only done about 5 episodes so far. All are to do with EdTech from a language teaching point of view. As you probably expect, there's been a number of episodes around the use of AI, so a great place to learn from experts in that area. And then a final resource which I have found very, very useful in recent months, as well as for many years, in fact, but particularly in recent months around the use of AI, is Russell Stannard's YouTube channel, which is teaching training videos. And he has produced many, many different videos around the use of AI, which I've certainly learned from. I know that he has found the videos on my channel as well useful as well. And that's what this is all about. It's about sharing and comparing and learning from each other, which I know myself and yourself, Mark, we're both huge fans of. So I would really recommend checking out not only Russell's website, also called Teaching Training Videos, but his YouTube channel as well. And you will learn a great deal just by checking out those 3 resources. There are many others, but check out the Language Teaching with AI Facebook group to find out even more places to learn and people to connect with. And you won't regret it for sure.
Great stuff. Brilliant, Joe. Well, look, thank you so much. You've shared so many resources and you definitely followed that same sort of approach as I have over the years, which is about, standing on the shoulders of giants and just shouting out plenty of people. But I'll wrap up by just shouting out you. Not shouting at you, that's different. But no, thank you so much, Joe. You are so generous and have been for so many years, both with me personally, but also to the many thousands of people that you work with and inspired. So thank you so much for joining us here on Insights with NetSupport. Please do stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button. I always point in one direction, but end up getting it wrong anyway. So I'll just do one little point and leave it there. But please do hit subscribe. Please do follow Joe on socials. Just look for Joe Dale, Joedale, and you will find him. A Google search will point you through to all the different platforms that you can find him on, because there are many. Joe, thanks again for taking the time to join us today. And thank you to you for taking time to listen to our blog and podcast, Insights with NetSupport. Until the next time, take care out there, everybody, and look after yourself. Thank you ever so much.